If you're a facilities manager at a university, you know students rely on the cafeteria for breakfast, lunch, dinner, and the occasional late-night snack. So when a dishwasher breaks down and dirty plates pile up, the mess hall can turn messy in the blink of an eye. Enter Grainger. With over 1 million industrial-grade products and fast delivery, the product you need now is never far away. So you can turn that dishwasher back into a lean, clean washing machine. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
You're in a good place now. You are listening to Perspectives with Ashley Burgess.
Welcome back live to Live Your True Life Perspectives, and I'm your host, Ashley Burgess. Children are so important, and helping them learn and understand and grow in life is so valuable. And they need so many different outlets to be able to do that. Books, learning, videos, every type of outlet possible to really expose them to quality information, as well as allowing them to grow and learn. And so joining me today on Live Your True Life Perspectives is children's author Chris Jordan. And Chris has written this book, Ethan's Truck Learning Adventures. And in this book, it's very neat because kids are going to be able to explore and learn so many things. Chris, great to have you on the show. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, and thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
I love the book, and I love the concept of Ethan's Truck Learning Adventures. So let's start, obviously, with the obvious. Let's talk about Ethan. Tell me more about your son.
Well, the book is based on my son, Ethan. Ethan is a very energetic, talkative person that likes to explore through play and through having a big imagination. So the book is about that. It's trying to encourage kids to not be afraid to imagine different things and be excited about learning through play and imagination.
Imagination is so important for children, and you're right. We had talked earlier a while back when we first met, and I think that, imagination, tell me more about what you feel is so important about helping a child facilitate that or understand that they can imagine various things.
I think it's very important for them to have a vivid imagination because it encourages them to explore outside their normal environment, and also opens possibilities for them that they might not have seen previously, based on the current environment that they're being raised in. So I believe having a vivid imagination is very important. I don't think we should put a cap on that for kids. I think we should encourage it. And yeah.
I agree with you, and it's interesting. So as I look through the book, and the book is awesome for everybody that's listening to the show, when you look at it, like first page is great because, Ethan is basically introducing himself, and we're going to learn about his trucks. And it's interesting because we see all the little trucks and we see everything, and so it's very colorful, but it also allows us to learn different things about different types of vehicles as well as different types of occupations and careers. So tell me more about, incorporating that concept, because I find that that's kind of a high quality concept that's in this book for young children, which is nice.
Yes, I wanted to include that because my son, I noticed that when I play with my son likes to play a lot. He always asks questions. He always asks, "Mommy, what's the name of this truck? What does it do?" So I took it as a learning experience for him, and I tried to incorporate different things associated with each truck, such as the occupation is associated with the truck. We have a fire truck, and I talk about how firemen work on the fire truck and they put out fires and what color the fire truck is. So I try to expose them to different types of occupations that he might not be exposed to normally on a daily basis, just to broaden his horizons and for him to for him and for other kids to understand that there's many different occupations, many things that you may not see on a daily basis, but you'll be that are there that you could actually strive to become in the future if you wanted to. And also incorporate a little bit of learning, teaching them about different trucks and what they are, what their functions are. So I think it's very important for them to keep that curiosity and that learning uh, ambition. I want them to be eager and not be afraid to ask questions and say, "What type of truck is this, mommy?" Or what does this do? I think that's very important to encourage kids to keep that curiosity
Yeah,
and
I
develop
agree
that.
with you. I agree that curiosity is definitely, I mean, and I think that's something that unfortunately as adults, it's something that we do need to cultivate as well, but many of us don't because, we kind of see things as humdrum or, the same day, same thing, different day. And I think that curiosity, though, and imagination is so important for anybody, but definitely for children because you're right, depending on circumstances and the way they're raised and how the family dynamic is. So if somebody is, experiencing maybe some hardships in the family dynamic or, having to, carry their weight as a child in the family where some people don't have to ever experience that. And I know that you have, you've dealt with that as a child and growing up in a family where you did have to do you did have to work, you did have to help out, and some people don't have to go through that, but having imagination really helps you, I'm sure, in that environment to know that you can still do anything.
That's correct. I grew up in a poor household at the beginning, and then gradually progressed. My mom was able to progress over the years to give us a better life. So it's very important to have imagination and not be confined to your environment and not to discourage people to explore outside your environment. Because kids nowadays they have more opportunities than we had at the time, and I think it's very important for us not to impose our limitations on them, guide them, but not be careful about crushing their dreams. And they like to, and I think a lot of kids learn very well when they're playing, if they're entertained and yeah.
They learn more, I guess, when they're playing and connecting and getting to understand. And I agree with you. It's like life, when we move around and we do things, we learn more. So going through the book though, going back to the book is it's great because you see, the character of Ethan and all these different kind of avenues and all these different occupations. And I find this so neat because as we're growing up, we're trying to figure out identity. We're trying to figure out what we want to do in life. And if we have options and opportunities and we see things that maybe we haven't seen before, it gives us a better, well-rounded view. And so I love the fact that we have, the cement truck, the fire truck, the pickup truck, and I love the tractor. I mean, these are great because you're seeing him in all these different instances in all these different possible occupations.
Yes, I was trying to do. Um, that's what I was trying to do to show kids different occupations and different types of trucks through Ethan.
That's neat. That's so neat. And I think one of the things that I really garnish from you is the fact that you don't. It's about not being afraid, right, to try new things. Tell me more about how you feel about that when it comes to kids.
And I don't think kids should be afraid to try new things. I try to encourage kids to, even if they're afraid, to try to overcome those fears. Um, obviously I think they should weigh the outcomes of overcoming those fears carefully. But I don't think that it should stop you from doing something. So I try to encourage kids to see those obstacles and try to figure out a way how to get around those obstacles or overcome those obstacles. It might be taking little steps at a time. It might be redirecting yourself. But I think it's very important for them to learn how to problem solve because it will help them out later on in life. Because everything's not easy in life. And if you learn how to problem solve at a young age, I believe that you will continue to use that skill throughout your life. And it will help you out as you get older when you reach difficult times or you need to solve an issue in life.
I agree with you. Tell me more about how to help children problem solve. Tell me a little bit more about that because that is essential. Is how do they figure out things? How do they solve their own problems and be kind of self-sufficient?
Well, for me, there's different techniques out there that you can use to try to teach kids how to problem solve. The one I use for my child is every time he runs into an obstacle, I sit down with him and I ask him, well, what do you think you could do to overcome those obstacles? And he'll sit down and he'll think about it and he will give me like little suggestions. And depending on the suggestion that he gives me, I counter that. And I say, well, how about you try this if it wasn't, and see if this works. Or I'll say to him, how about you try that and then you come back to me, you let me know if that works. And then and if it didn't work, then we'll have to sit down and think about what else could you have done differently to achieve the outcome that you wanted. So that's the technique I use for my child. If he fails on something, I try to be patient and calm. Or if he's like throwing a tantrum, I try to be patient with him and talk to him in a calm voice, and just ask him questions. Ask him, like, I understand how you feel, but how can we fix this problem? What do you think the solution should be? And I try to get him to come up with the solutions for each problem. And then implement those solutions, and then he comes back to me and tells me whether it worked or not. But that's the way I encourage him to solve problems.
Problem solving is so important, Chris. You are so right on. And being able to help children understand how to solve their problems. And we'll talk more about that when we return. But helping them solve problems, I also want to talk about processing stress. And that's something that's so important and something that we really need to talk about more now more than ever. And I feel that children really need to be looked at as, young adults that are needing to learn and grow. And if we can give them the ability to help themselves, that's going to really help not only children, but it's going to help our society because children are definitely our future. So stay tuned. When we return, Chris and I'll be talking more about Ethan's truck learning adventures, more about problem solving, being able to process stress, and some about, education and what's missing and how we can replace that with some things that we can do at home. So stay tuned. Live Your True Life Perspectives with your host, me, Ashley Burgess, will be back in. I'll be back this time in 2 shakes.
Turn it up and jump in the deep end on Perspectives. Now, here's Ashley.
Welcome back live to Live Your True Life Perspectives, and I'm your host, Ashley Burgess. Joining me on Live Your True Life Perspectives is Chris Jordan, the creator, the writer of the children's book, Ethan's Truck Learning Adventures, and other books as well. Chris, right before the break, we were talking about the concept of problem solving and how important it is to help children be able to solve their own problems. Let's talk a little bit more about that, because what I found is that sometimes the kids don't have the tools to understand how to do that. And if we don't help them generate the tools at a young age, it becomes a deficit for them. So if you can describe even more kind of the problem solving, application that you were talking about right before the break.
Yes, I agree with you completely. Sometimes they just don't have the tools, and it could be many reasons why they don't have the tools. It could be just because the environment that they grow in, the people that they're surrounded by don't have those tools. What I use, like I said, for my child, I ask him questions. I encourage him to ask questions. I don't believe there's no question that he shouldn't ask. I believe if he doesn't know the answer to something, he should stand up and ask the question to me or to a teacher. And it's okay for me to say that I don't know the answer. And I think it's very important for my son to understand that mommy doesn't know the answers to everything. And when I do tell him that I don't know the answer, I'll tell him that I will look up the answer. And I make sure I sit down with him and we get on the computer and we Google, we do some research, or we'll go to the library and look for the answer to his questions. A prime example was actually yesterday. He was asking me about his tooth. Was a tooth a bone? And I know some people think that a tooth is a bone, but it actually is made out of calcium. So it's made out of mineral. So it's not technically a bone. So that's something that I had to look up because I know different people give you different answers. So I sat him next to me and we just got on the internet and started looking up whether the tooth is considered a bone. So that's one technique that you can use to teach him problem solving. Another one could be by playing with them. Playing with their trucks or their toys and having little conflicts between the toys so they can learn how to deal with the conflict between both different toys and how to deal with their emotions and how to properly react to certain emotions. So those are certain things that I do with my child, and I try to encourage him so he could problem solve.
That is awesome. And I love the fact that Chris is working with her son and being able to look up things like that, like about the tooth and understanding that. And is it a bone? What is it? Is it calcium? And that's so important because as kids begin to learn about these things, they begin to process information. They begin to ask more questions. And we're going to be talking about this more in the next segment. But, being able to offer information to them and help them is so valuable. And, I feel that, Chris is really spot on here because the more questions that a child can ask and the more that a parent is willing to help find those answers to those questions, not only the more powerful that the child feels, but the more in touch the child feels with the environment and the world around them. So stay tuned. We have a lot more coming up. Don't change the channel, so don't change it. We got a lot to talk about as well as processing stress and more. So Live Your True Life Perspectives with me, your host Ashley Burgess, will be back in. I'll be back this time in 2 shakes.
This is Jake Busey, and you're listening to Perspectives with Ashley Burgess.
Welcome back live to Live Your True Life Perspectives, and I'm your host, Ashley Burgess. Thanks for joining us today. And as you've been listening today, I've been talking to an amazing children's author, Chris Jordan. And Chris has written Ethan's Truck Learning Adventures as well as other books. But we've been talking about the concept of, why she wrote the book, but based on problem solving in the last segment. And it's so amazing to be able to answer questions for children and be able to broaden their horizons in that process. And I think that's really good. Chris, when we talk about, the questions and the problem solving, that also kind of leads into, the next concept of helping them process their own stress or deal with their own emotions. Let's talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, I think it's very important for them to learn how to deal with their emotions, especially starting at a young age. My son, he's 6 years old now, so he's in that stage where they're learning a lot, and it's going to impact their future. So I think especially at that early age, it's very important for parents and teachers and anybody that's around your child to encourage them to explore their emotions and learn how to deal with their emotions. If they get upset, not to throwing a tantrum is really not going to solve the problem, in my view. I think they should, I know when my son gets upset, I sit him down and I tell him it's okay to be upset, it's okay to feel that way, but you have to figure out what's making you upset and figure out a solution to that problem. It goes back to problem solving, I think, for me. And then he'll sometimes he needs a little minute to himself, and sometimes he doesn't. Sometimes he's ready to talk, and it's okay. It's okay if kids need a minute to themselves, I think. Sometimes they need that time just to go through their emotions and calm down, and then they're ready to talk. And I think it's very good to encourage kids to take that moment if they need to take that moment, and know that once they're done taking that moment, they should come to you. It's okay for them to come to you and talk to you about the issues that they're having, and to discuss the situation, to try to figure out a solution to the situation.
Being able to discuss openly, being able to discuss with somebody and be able to process their emotion. That's awesome. So you kind of sit them down and have that conversation where you allow him to just kind of vent or just, talk about how he feels.
Yes, and I try not to get upset if he says something that is a little upsetting. I remind myself that I need to be calm, because he needs to see somebody that's calm and that he's opening up to me. And if I get upset, he's going to close up and not open up to me and not come to me when he has a big issue. And I want to make sure that he understands that he could come to his parents anytime he has an issue, even in the future, even if it's bad or good. He could always come to his parents and sit down and discuss with them and tell us what happened, what he thinks could be the solution, or if he doesn't have a solution, to brainstorm to find a solution to the issue, or just to vent. Mm-hmm. And I think it also encourages quality time with your parents, and I think it creates a connection between your child and the parents when you do that. When they feel comfortable enough where they can come and tell you anything, and they know that you're not gonna sit there and scream at them and get upset. You might get a little irritated, and that's normal. I mean, it's not, we're human. Everybody's gonna go through that at some point, and your kid will tell you sometimes things that will be a little upsetting, but I try to remind myself that I know I need to be calm, even if he tells me something that's upsetting, and just relax, be calm, and tell them what I think. So that's how I'm trying to teach my child how to deal with his emotions. And that's how I sit down with him. And sometimes it takes toys. My child likes to play a lot. So sometimes I take his toys when he's really upset and I put him in a little circle and I play with him with the toys. And I have the conversations through the toys. And he tells me his emotions with his little toy and I tell him my response through my little toy, and sometimes that works.
I like
At least
that.
for my
I like that. So y'all kind of use the toys almost like kind of like to speak through the toys, kind of role play through the toys in a safe way.
yes, because I try to create a safe environment where he could like express his emotions and not have to worry about a parent, one of us screaming at him for him expressing his emotions. I think he should be able to express his emotions. Now, he cannot break the law, obviously, in the house. That would be bad, very bad. But I mean, I try to guide him as best as I can. Because I think as parents, our job should be to guide them. They're they're going to be their own individual. They're going to have their own personality. They're going to have their own feelings, how they react to things. And it might not be the way we will react to it, but that's the way they react to it. And I think we need to be conscious of that and be accepting of it, but guide them, obviously, and try not to, if they're going the wrong way, try to guide them the opposite way, the right way, as much as possible, and let them know about consequences. Everything has consequences. My son knows the word consequence. I just introduced that to him a couple months ago because he started to throw some tantrums. um, and let him know that everything that you do has a consequence. You can either choose to have a good consequence or a bad consequence. It's up to you. You're making decisions every day. I encourage my son to make decisions, and tell him every day you make a decision. You make a decision to be happy every day. Um, but that's a decision that you're making. Based on the decisions that you make, you'll receive certain consequences. It could be good or it could be bad. I tell them to strive to have good consequences as much as possible.
I love that concept, Chris, too, because the idea is we want our kids to be able to process, we want our kids to be able to make choices. And you're right. I feel like a lot of times children are not given the avenue to feel confident enough to make a choice. And as you and I both well know, there's many adults in this world that were kind of raised that way, and they're still unable to make choices in their life.
That's correct. And I want him to be able to make his own choices. I want him to think for himself as much. I don't want him to be a robot and have somebody tell him something and he just follows. I want him to think for himself and know when to follow and when to leave. I think that's very important because it's just um, a person that follows all the time and doesn't know when not to do that will end up getting themselves in trouble later on in life at some point. Because somebody might give you bad advice. And I tell my son all the time, see, not everybody has your best intentions. And that's just part of the real world. And I try to tell my son that the real world, it could be good, but there's also bad stuff in the real world. I don't want to shelter my son from all evils of the world. um, but obviously, I do shelter him from some. From some. I have boundaries, but I want him to understand that there's good and bad, and you have to be able to make those decisions and decide which way you want to go in your life, and in anything, in your career, in school, and understand that regardless of which way you take, there's always a consequence for that. So every action has a reaction. So I try to tell them that.
I like that, and I like the fact that you're not trying to shelter, because you're right. It's like if we're sheltering a child, you're not actually presenting the reality, right? So we're not, and I know that there's a lot of folks out there that have become helicopter parents. They're super sheltering, and that comes from a lot of upbringing. That comes from probably fear, and a lot of times a helicopter parent type person, kind of came around this way because maybe their parents weren't there for them. But in the same process, they're kind of squeezing their child to only see a piece of the world. And you're right, if he's not exposed, at least knowledge base, to the fact that certain things do exist, that could be potentially harmful in its own right.
Yes, and I just wanted to know that the whole world is not the way that he sees it every single day. There's places in other countries that have a whole different upbringing of their children and environment. They're being brought up in, combat zones and stuff like that. And I find that helps him understand a little bit and probably encourages compassion also. I bring a combat zone because I was in the military before, previously, and I served in combat zones. So I've seen how children grow up in that environment, and there is a big difference between the way certain children grow up versus the way my child grows up, the privileges that he has and all that stuff, and the opportunities that he has. And I want him to appreciate that, and be compassionate to other people that may not have that. And like he's run into things in school where sometimes some kids don't have some of the things that he has, and he comes home and he says something that they told him something, and I have to explain to him that everybody's not as fortunate as he is to have these things, and but that doesn't mean that we should treat him differently. I don't want him to treat anybody differently. I want him to treat everybody the same, and with respect and dignity. I try to encourage that as much as possible.
I think that's super valuable because you're right. Everybody is equal. Everybody is at the same level, and there's a group of our society today, unfortunately, that are on a different trajectory where they believe that they're better than others, or they believe that money defines value, or titles, and that's so far from the truth. And it's like you being able to educate your child on that is so powerful, and I think that's something that parents have to take on and do on their own. Don't you think?
Yes, I do. And I understand that sometimes parents don't have the time because of, societal issues. They might have to work 2 or 3 jobs a day just to put even food on the table. But I think there's always a little bit of time that you could take, even if it's just during bath time or at night putting your child to sleep, where you could sit there and have a conversation with them and talk about things and talk about society and about their little friends at school and how they interact with each other.
That's super powerful. Yeah, Chris, this is awesome. And I think anybody listening right now, you understand it. It definitely is. It definitely takes a village, but it starts in the home. It starts in the home, trying to help your kid really be able to see, and understand the world they live in, not to be scared by it, but to see the truth so they can actually maneuver in a positive, safe way.
Yes, I agree. With limitations, obviously. I'm not going to expose my son to everything.
Right.
But yes.
Totally agree.
As much as
as much as possible. Stay tuned when we return. Chris is going to be offering her nuggets of wisdom here in our last segment, some things to really think about and ponder, because it's really important. Raising a child, it takes time, it takes effort, and I know that some people, you have so many responsibilities, but a few minutes every day really connecting with your kiddo can really be helpful in the future, because everything that we do in the very beginning of a child's life impresses on their entire life. I see it every day in my work, and it becomes, a way of life, and they become adults with those thought processes. So stay tuned. We'll be back. Live your true life perspectives with your host, me, Ashley Burgess, will be back in. I'll be back this time in 2 shakes.
Get in here. You're listening to Perspectives with Ashley Burgess.
Welcome back live to Live Your True Life Perspectives, and I'm your host, Ashley Burgess. We've been talking with Chris Jordan. She's the children's author of Ethan's Truck Learning Adventures and other books as well. And, I think it's so powerful to really talk about the problem solving, processing stress, really connecting with your child, answering those questions, having those conversations. And Chris, now is the time that I ask everybody that's on the show, I'm not putting you in the hot seat, but I'm asking you for some golden nuggets of wisdom that you would like to share here with the Live Your True Life family.
I think just to be patient with your kids and try to teach your kids as much as possible during the time that they're under your care by encouraging exploring things, overcoming difficulties, and teaching them about different things within your community and outside your community.
I love that. I love that. And another nugget of wisdom too for us. What was your other one we were talking about?
Learning. Encourage learning through play.
So learning through play, I love that, and we talked about that earlier. And so anybody that's joining us now, learning through play with your child is so powerful, and it's great because Chris was talking about that, how they are able to deal with stress or talk about feelings through that, and I think that's super powerful, Chris.
Yeah, I think so too. That's the way I teach my child, and that's the way I find that is the easiest way to teach him things and encourage that.
And any other nuggets of wisdom that you would like to share today?
Well, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to sit down with your child and talk to them, express your feelings, discuss things, and encourage learning. It takes a village to teach your child. So don't just rely on school, rely on people around you and your support system.
I love that. And that's so true. Chris, coming from, an author, but also a parent, this is powerful. And, I feel that anybody listening to the show, it does take a village, but at the same time, our kids they need us. They need the information. They need to be helped. They need to be encouraged. And I love the way that you work. I love the way that you work with Ethan. I think that's powerful. And I just enjoy having you on the show so much. You're prolific, and you get right down to it, and that's what's so powerful.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me. I love being here. It's been a very enjoyable experience. Thank you.
I'm glad to have you, and I look forward to, I know that you have all kinds of works in progress too. You have all kinds of things going on, so I can't wait to have you back on the show with your next project, so I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, I'll definitely come back on if you haven't. My next book is going to be 40 Pence. It's coming out in November. And yeah. And check out my book, Ethan's Truck Learning Adventures.
And where do we find the book, and where can we order it from?
You can find the book at Amazon.com or at my website, authorcjordan.com. And you could connect with me through Facebook at Author C. Jordan or Instagram at Author C. Jordan. And yeah.
Perfect. Well, Chris, I enjoyed having you on. I look forward to having you back on. Looking forward to Party Pants here and later on this year as well. So I'm looking forward to that. That's going to be a great one for sure, especially for kids and adults. So that'll be awesome. That'll be awesome. Well, I enjoyed having Chris on the show. Thank you so much for everybody that's tuned in. This is really helpful. Go out there and get a copy of Ethan's Truck Learning Adventures. Share it and have fun. It's about reading with your kids. It's about experiencing. It's about having that experience together and being able to, remember those times. It's all about experiences. It's not about things. It's about the experiences we have with our family, with our children, and that's what's so powerful. And in the process, helping them learn, allowing them to ask questions, answering to the best of your ability. If you don't have the answers, like Chris said, go to Google, go online, find the answer, figure it out. And the coolest thing about it is we probably learned some stuff in the process too. So definitely check in. More shows coming up every week. You can check out online after the national radio show. Always, the podcast is always available on Apple, Spotify, Spreaker, Stitcher, and the list goes on. iHeartRadio and more. So stay tuned. Another show coming up next. Want you to be here. Please share it with your family and friends and live your true life perspectives with me, your host, Ashley Burgess, will be back in. Well, I'll be back this time. I think you know it. I'll be back this time in 3 shakes.